Dear senior management and executives, thank you so much for your trust in our ERM team. I'm Yuan Yuan from ERM Consultant team. In the past few weeks, we have tailored an integrated ERM framework for Cinemark, including the risk identification, quantification, and qualification. And we also want to thanks for your effort and time and patience in the familiar interview. Based on the scenarios you provided, we have already computed the risk exposures for different scenarios. We have now for the risk four, which is the competitor risk. We have in the worst case scenario, we have now like it will decrease the company value by 27.12% of the baseline value and with a likelihood of 2.4%. And for risk 3, which is the economic risk, will decrease the company value by 1.2% with a likelihood of 11.55%. And in total, the likelihood of achieving and exceeding the baseline company value is 65.45%. During the consensus meeting, we have agreed on the risk limits and risk appetite. We know, like for the competitor risk, we wanted to keep below 20% of the impact of company value with the likelihood of less than 2.5%. And for the economic risk, we want to keep it under 0.5% with the likelihood of less than 10%. And we want to achieve or exceed the strategic company value with a likelihood of more than 68% of the time. So in that case, we need to manage our individual and total company risk exposures within the risk limits and risk appetite through risk priority tools with different level of mitigation. We will revise the distributable company cash flow projection, recalculate the baseline company value, revise key risk scenario impacts, and recalculate the enterprise risk exposure. Now let's welcome Patty to talk about how risk 4 is mitigated.
Thank you, Yuan Yuan. Cinemark is going to identify the risk prioritization based on the changes in level of mitigation. Risk 4 is related to the Netflix success in film production, which will cause the loss on attendance based in the domestic market. Increasing leverage of advertising is one of the ways to reduce the loss in this risk scenario. Cinemark can increase the brand loyalty and attract more customers based on put more investment on the advertising through the magazine, videos, or the local search software. Improvement of customer service is also another way to reduce the cost in the risk scenario. Cinemark could improve the quality of the customer service. They can also put more effort on the extent of the customer service through the creative dining in the film. This will bring customer different experience rather than stay at home watch the movie on the Netflix. Outperform projection and sound equipment is another way we suggest the Cinemark can use to reduce the cost of the risk scenario. Cinemark can put more investment on IMAX screens and domes to bring customer uniquely immersive watching experience. This could differentiate the traditional theater from the Netflix, which can deliver customers different experience which the Netflix cannot deliver. So in general, our ERM team suggests the Cinemark to increase the marketing expense and additional investment expense based on the advertisement, customer service, and also the strong equipment. It will lead to the 0.5% from year 1 to year 2 and 0.3% from year 6 to year 10 based on the additional fixed expenses. And also it will lead to 1 million per year from year 1 to year 10 based on the additional investment expense. Now next we'll mention to talk about mitigation of risk 3.
Thank you, Patty. So risk 3 is related to the economic downturn in the United States. Therefore, using financial derivatives to hedge against the potential economic losses would be
be an ideal mitigation. Being afraid of the decline of interest rate would lead to a lower investment income, CHI could enter into a forward rate agreement to hedge against the potential risk of interest rate. And also it can enter into stock options to hedge against the decrease of stock price. It can also enter into currency swap to hedge against the depreciation of foreign currencies. In order to achieve this goal widely and effectively, CHI should cooperate with an investment bank and pay broker fees and transaction fees to mitigate this economic risk effectively. According to our mitigations for risk 3 and risk 4, our additional fixed expense will increase 0.5% from year 1 to year 5 and 0.3% from year 6 to year 10. Besides, its additional investment expense will increase $2 million from year 1 to year 5 and $1 million from year 6 to year 10. After our adjustment, our baseline company value would decrease from $5.3 billion to around $5.27 billion. Now let's welcome Yisong to talk about the impacts of risk 4 after considering the mitigations.
Thanks, Meijing. With mitigation, risk 4 would have different outcome because more customers are willing to be in the cinema instead of just watching at home. And so now we assume that attendance rate reduction will be mitigated, and the effect of the mitigation will be cumulative through years. The table shows it works since year 2, and at the end of year 10, it will be reduced only 5%. And then Cinemark could raise the ticket price correspondingly if the attendance rate goes up, higher demand and higher price. So at year 10, the ticket price reduction will be only 5%, we assume. And as a result, the likelihood of CWC scenario for risk 4 will be reduced to 2.5%, and the total company value will be reduced from reduction will be reduced from 27% to 18.4% now, and it's right within the risk limit. Then as for the moderate scenario, we have the similar assumption for the attendance rate. The market expense will be reduced to 4% because it's only a moderate scenario. We have already did it in the mitigation. And then we also have a similar assumption for the ticket price. Consequently, the likelihood reduction will be reduced to 17%, and the total company value will be reduced from the original 17.7% to the 5.4% now, and both scenarios are controlled right within the risk limit. Next, welcome Zhongyuan to talk about the impact on risk 3.
Thanks, Yisong. So I will now let's look at the first scenario of the risk 3. So as this is a general economic recovery, so we assume like the first indicator, the inflation rate will remain unchanged. So it will still increase 50 BPS for the first 3 years. And as for the attendance rate, since we'll invest a lot in our customer service quality and purchase equipment as well as the marketing, so we assume the attendance rate will increase to 12% for the first 2 years and to 10% in the last years. As for the earn rate on invested assets, since we suggest CHI to enter in some hedging transactions such as the forward rate agreements, the portfolio management, the stock purchase, the stock options. So we assume the earn rate on invested assets will decrease less to 0.5% in those 3 years. And we assume the likelihood of the upside scenario will remain unchanged. So it will still be 5% since we are some more conservative.
And after we inputting all those new impacts to our risk models, we actually got a new company value, which is 1.2% higher than our original revised company value, so it's within our risk limits. Now let's look at the second scenario, the credible worst case. So firstly, just as I discussed before, the inflation rate is the general economic situation, so we assume it will still remain unchanged, so it will still decrease 80 bps for those 5 years. As for the end rate on invested assets, since we entered some hedging transactions such as purchase the forward rate agreements and the currency swap, so we assume the end rates will decrease that to 1% in those 5 years. And in this scenario, we also assume the exchange rates, this parity will also decrease fast, which is from the original 1.1 to 1, non-USD to USD to 1.05 to 1.0 non-USD to USD. And we also assume the attendance rate will decrease less from previous 20% in the first 2 years to 18%, and also decrease to 8% in year 3 and year 4, and to 2% in the last years. And we consequently assume the likelihood of this credible worst case scenario will decrease from previous 15% to 9%. And after we also including all those new impacts to our risk scenarios, we also got a new baseline value, which is also 0.3% decrease from our revised company value. So it's still within our risk limit, which is 0.5%. Now let's welcome Tianchen to do the conclusion part.
So I will use this ERM framework to recap a little bit of what we've done before. So we've done qualitative assessment and familiar interview for risk quantification, and we've also built our ERM model. Unfortunately, we found out that risk 3 and risk 4 are exceeding the risk appetite. So we came up with risk priority decisions, which is used to reduce the likelihood of occurrence of risk scenarios and also the severity of these scenarios. As mentioned by my teammates, our mitigation plans include leveraging on advertisements, improving customer services, and introducing better quality equipment, as well as various financial derivatives such as forwards, swaps, and options. After we calculating the likelihood and the impacts, it was proved that our mitigation plans have successfully managed the risk to within the risk appetite. As we can see on the ERE, post-decision ERE table, the likelihood of achieving or exceeding the baseline is equal to 4.03 plus 69.23, which is equal to 73.26. It is higher than 68. And also the scenario impacts have been reduced to the level under the risk limits. So we strongly recommend that the company put the mitigation in place because it can help hedge the risk and also reduce the unexpected loss of the company value. And which is also worth noting is that risk 3 upside the scenario, because risk priority decision does not only include the risk mitigation but also risk exploitation. So we recommend the company take actions to increase risk exposures. That's all. Thank you for listening. That's all of our presentation.